I wanted to kind of run through what we're going to talk about today. We have it's Andy and I were talking about this. So Andy is my co-host on this, and some days we'll have dozens of people on it, and some days we'll have a handful. And I don't know whether it's a topic issue or what. This particular topic today is a little more complicated. I guess it's about data-driven decision making in AI, and I I don't know whether that scares some people off because they don't know I have enough data to analyze or what. I have Craig Phillips on. He's with Volia. They do a lot of this work, and they're in this space. And there's a lot of other vendors out there. So I thought it'd be good to just kind of play around and see who has what kinds of. Whoops, hang on. Here we go. Who has what kind of issues with marketing data and what kind of things they would like to solve with that. And then we're going to get into scaling marketing using AI. And we can always go off script. So if you have something pressing that's, on your mind, Janine, Elani, Alexandra, and you want to cover it. I see Chris Sumaway just joined us. Hi, Chris. So if you have something like that you want to talk about, we can obviously dive in. So Andy Slifer being my co-host here. Andy is a fractional CMO, more of a strategist. I also act as a fractional CMO, and I teach businesses how to build strong marketing teams using a thing that we call the optics operating framework. So I guess I'm more of the coach. I'm just neck deep into AI because I'm trying to teach teams how to leverage AI so they can scale more, produce better results without having to turn around and ask the HR department to hire more. Andy, if you want to pipe in, you can kind of introduce yourself.
Sure. I'll keep it real brief. I got my start in working for various ad agencies and a couple of client-side roles. Worked for some big brands like Coca-Cola and Procter and Gamble, and so I cut my teeth on the large, corporate side of marketing and how it works, and then took it on my own after about 7 years, and have been doing this for 20 years. First as like more of a project manager, and then I made my way into more strategy. Finally wrote a book on strategy, and then started doing the CMO thing because there's been an emerging demand for that in the last decade. Really what I do for companies from startups all the way to multi-billion-dollar organizations is build marketing systems for them. So, if you think of systems in a business are, the general administrative or operations, the lead gen, the sales side, and there's one other I'm leaving out. Oh, the fulfillment, of course. I dabble in two of those, and that's marketing and sales, but I'm building those integrated systems that help them improve the way they drive revenue.
In the event that we uncover something just brilliant and you guys want access to the replay, you can do that. And the replays, if you want access, you just go to this particular URL, and I'll throw that in the old chat also, so that you can pop in there if you see something useful. And then what I thought I would do is just kind of roll into today's topic, which is data-driven decision-making using AI. I personally have only done a dabbling in it, if you will, right? Because there's a whole lot you can do in that space. Like, for instance, one of the things that we were working on was just taking a small data set, an Excel spreadsheet of clients, and then trying to analyze that for any kind of trends that would show up. Are we particularly heavy in a certain industry, certain niche, certain decision maker? I was also trying to figure out a way to purge a database of businesses that shouldn't be in the database, So I was trying to just use something like Chat GPT on the front end, where I create a CSV file, paste it in there with instructions, and tell it to do certain things. And I had to really kind of limit how much data it would take. So I kept having to delete columns and all that stuff. So it was a bit of a pain. And then, of course, ChatGPT expanded how much data you could throw in there. I know Craig and his team work with the API and do some stuff on the back end. I had also kind of looked at maybe playing around with the back end as well. And then I don't know whether y'all have seen it, but I wrote this blog post and we put it up, I think it was yesterday, which is 27 AI tools you can use right now for data insights and scalable marketing. And in that, if you scroll down, and maybe Faith or Kelly, y'all could paste that link in here. Actually, maybe I can just do it real quick. I'll paste that in the chat in the event y'all want to go check it out. But lots of tools here that you can use. And in customer segmentation, you've got optimizely data or dynamic yield and segment. I signed up to play around with segment. I haven't got in deeply enough, but this is kind of what it looks like on the back end. And you can see that you can add lots of different data sources. And my suspicion is, and Andy, I don't know whether you've played around with this or not, but my suspicion is this is going to be for, a mid-sized to large company that has a lot of data that could be sifted through. I don't know that it would be for a company, for instance, that maybe has, less than 1,000 visitors to their website a month, because it's probably overkill. But it depends on what you're trying to analyze. Now, if you're trying to analyze a big data set that you've gotten from somebody else, this may come in handy. If you have a lot of data, I know on Salesforce sales forecasting, Salesforce's Einstein does some pretty amazing things. So that's pretty cool. In terms of predictive analytics, these are pretty interesting tools as well. And I, just say, y'all go check them out. I'm sure there are more. I don't know whether, Andy, have you run into any of this in your travels, sir?
No, this is being more of a generalist. I haven't gotten this deep into it yet, but that's part of the reason I'm here to learn. So
Gotcha.
I'm very interested in them though.
Yeah. Okay. How about Neilani or Janine? I don't know whether you guys have dabbled in this, or do you see a need to do any kind of predictive analytics?
We would like to get started. We have quite a few clients with very big websites and a lot of data. I would like to start analyzing it, but I don't know how.
Okay. So give me an idea what you're talking about. What kind of data would your clients, and what kind of clients do you work with?
We do digital marketing for law firms, and we've just switched all of our law firms to GA4. And as you know, that results in less data that we have to work with. Some of the metrics that we used previously, we no longer have available to us. So I'd like to just look at the data that we're getting from Google Analytics and maybe have a better chance of looking at that and seeing trends, optimizing websites for it moving forward.
Okay. How about you, Neilani? Is there anything in the safety space or any of your clients that need something like this?
I'm not sure. We've just introduced a new vertical, which is, a learning system, right, that we're trying to launch globally. Otherwise, I think the things that we do are mostly word of mouth, and we can't hire enough people to staff, so we're not marketing that service. But I think AI could do tremendous things, and I think just from our first meeting and now, and now this is my second. I missed last week. I think my decision is, do I outsource this or do I try to do it myself? That's really where I'm at. I'm sure I'm a rather different headspace than other people on the call. Yeah. And with the advancements and how quickly everything's going, and me trying to play catch up, I don't think it's worth it for me to become an expert in AI. I think I'd much rather outsource it and go work on my farm on Molokai while I can, which is what I was doing last week.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, to answer the question, do you outsource it or not? My feeling is that I think you probably could outsource maybe some coaching and training on it, where that person leads you through it. You say, look, here's what I want it to do. That person makes that happen and then turns around and shows you how to make it happen on your own. Because I mean, that's kind of the stuff that I do for clients, right? But the only reason I'm saying that is because once the heavy lifting is really in getting the data or the outcome that you want, and then figuring out which tool to use, figuring out what's the right prompting methodology for that. And then once you get that down, then it's like, okay, here you go, off you go. Like with Craig's team, for instance. And Craig, I don't know whether you want to pipe in or not, because I know this is a passion of Igor's, but he's not on. But a lot of times what we get described, and Jean, this would be something that might be something we could help you with down the road. But we get people that say, look, we have access to some data, but we don't know how to analyze it. And Craig has told me a few times, there's some security risks with using ChatGPT. A lot of these things give you access to the tool, but they also have access to your data, and that data then trains their tool, it trains their AI, and other people then potentially could access your data. And that's the scary part for me, right? I don't want AI taking the stuff that I've put in there so it can massage my data, and then it becomes the source for everybody else. It could be really confidential stuff that I don't want in there. And Craig's team has worked with some open source tools out there where it's a lot more secure. So that's the tricky part. It's right. It's figuring out what it is that you need done, what you have access to, and then what do you want it to do moving forward, right? In other words, do you want a push button system that allows you to then operate it moving forward? Like there's a need that I have, and I've been plotting my next move on this, but I was thinking about, pinging Craig and saying, okay, Craig, I want your team to develop this tool for me. And most of the time, Craig will come back and he goes, okay, my team researched it and there's a tool that already does this, and here it is, and it's only $20 a month. I'm like, okay, good. Save me thousands of dollars. But well, one of them is this very thing I was talking about just data mining, right? Well, let's say, for instance, let's talk about outbound marketing as opposed to analyzing our inbound. I'm talking about how do I reach a massive clientele or prospect list. And you can go to like apollo.io, which uses AI to source a list of contacts, right? So a lot of it's pulled from LinkedIn and some other sources. So you download that. The big problem with virtually every, and I don't even know that virtually is the right word to put in front of it, because it's almost every one of them. Every one of them will give you data, and the industry is wrong in probably 40 to 60% of the cases. And a lot of people, when they start their business, they'll use SIC code or something that's improper or incorrect, or they change the coding system. And so now nobody's gone in and changed it. So you get, like, especially when you're getting thousands of people, it's really hard to go through that and say, is this company really in the industry that I'm targeting? For instance, we were targeting healthcare, and we pulled down a list of, 3,000 names. And we were specifically trying to target sleep medicine. And next thing you know, we're emailing auto clinics, auto spas, hospice organizations, because the company that was doing the outreach for us didn't fully purge the database. But if they had just done keyword searches across the name of the company or the description of the company, they would have found that they're miscategorized. So I was like, I'd love to have a tool that would do that. And likewise, Janine, I don't know how big the traffic is for some of your law firms, but there are lots of tools out there that will tell you who's seeing your website. But what I've found with those tools is that they give you 95% useless information and 5% useless, and it's really hard to sift through it, right? And have you experienced something similar?
Yeah, we use several programs, but the information isn't very reliable. We have that same problem.
Yeah, a lot of bots, a lot of like they'll say Coca-Cola is looking at your site, or Cox Communications is looking at your site. Well, it's just a customer of Cox, right? And so it's really hard to ferret through that and see if it's a legit prospect. But by the same token, what I really want to know is like we develop lead magnets to get conversions, and I'm sure in the legal industry there's some things like that. How do you get a list to stay in front of, depending upon what space you're in, right? How would you create something that you could then use AI to analyze and say, this is actually of interest to my target market? And based on all the web traffic I have, the people that are going to this have this characteristic. Now, I know that in big data sets, and Andy, you probably have dealt with these, but I have a guy who's in the plastic surgery business, right? And he uses big data to find out who's in market for that right now in a 100-mile radius. Car dealerships have been using that for years, where they'll take the analytics, and it goes way beyond what Google Analytics will provide you, but somehow there are these companies out there that know exactly when you're exhibiting that kind of buying behavior. Have you used any of those data sets, Andy?
Similar. It goes back at some ways, but it all started back at the time when you'd look at Axiom data and certain profiles within neighborhoods, and they could pinpoint who had a certain buyer personality. But as more lately, I've heard of those technologies where they know they're tracking what they're listening to, where they're going online. It's scary the amount of data they have on hand that they can then start to predictively look at when they're in the buying mode, as you say.
Yeah, no, it is really interesting.
I've definitely feel like I've been targeted by that recently. I think I shared with you that I've received, right as I started talking about potentially wanting to invest in property and talking about wanting to invest in a car as well, I was magically pre-approved for loans for both out of nowhere, within weeks of me beginning to research and talk about these. So certainly I'm on someone's data set somewhere.
Oh yeah. Look, it's funny because I was just thinking about that yesterday, and I was trying to remember what it was, but I know that I haven't done a Google search. I haven't done anything. And I just mentioned it to somebody, probably a couple times, that I was thinking about researching something or buying something. It might have been buying. And I don't know whether it was, over a Zoom conference or a telephone, or I'm just standing too close to the echo, or my iPhone, but literally I got like an email from somebody offering that service. And then I started to see it in the ads, and I was like, somebody's listening.
Yeah. I've had a situation with my phone. I think somebody's listening to me on my phone with stuff like that happening. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah.
No, you're fine. Something similar has been happening to me where I think it somehow knows what I'm buying at Walmart, because when I go to Walmart, I don't know if it can see what's on my receipt, but things that I've bought in the past will just pop up on the Walmart app, even though I'm not putting them in my cart. Just random things that I decide to buy, that I see while I'm there. Next time I pull up the Walmart app, it's there, even though I've never looked at it on the app. It's just I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, but it will, something that is on my receipt, I'll then be retargeted with the next day.
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, there is.
May I suggest?
Oh my goodness.
A dumb phone.
That's right. That's right. I didn't know they still sold those.
She
things.
may be
That's
onto
amazing.
something. We found that happens a lot with Android, more so than Apple, but Android's pretty good at it.
Pretty good at listening in.
That's a good point.
Listening in.
I recently switched from a iPhone to an Android, and I've noticed a lot more retargeting on the Android.
Really?
Yes.
For sure.
Oh my gosh.
If you have an Android and it's connected to your car and talk about something in the car, they will pick it up.
Wow. Man, that's something creepy, isn't it? Well, I know that Apple's been doing a whole lot of more secure stuff to keep your things private. And yet the company whose motto was do no evil sure seems to be getting as much data as they can from you.
Mine is anecdotal, but it's well proven, I believe. So,
yeah. Well, mine too. And, we have that Echo in our house that listens in, Alexa. And methinks Alexa knows more than she's telling. So
Don't say it too loud or mine will hear you and turn
yeah,
them.
right.
That's true.
But I am really, I wish I could remember what it was, because I was like, dang, I know I haven't ever searched for this, but it showed up. But fascinating stuff. Meanwhile, how about, what do you say we just kind of move into the scaling part of this? And because that's topic number 2, which is scaling marketing efforts with AI. How many of you guys are trying to scale marketing using any kind of an AI tool? And have you had an experience with it? What specifically are you looking to accomplish with that? Andy, you've been playing much with it?
Yeah, I think we talked about this a little bit last week, but yeah, I'm using it just to knock out more, take about 2/3 of the time out of everyday marketing related tasks. So for example, one of my clients were doing a photo shoot. I literally plugged into ChatGPT. Here's my client. Here's where they're located. Here are all of the things about the location. Come up with a shot list for a half-day shoot. And it's a good foundation. It wasn't perfect, but it was something to work from, and it probably cut our time at least in half in coming up with a shot list. That's just one example.
Yeah. I use it all the time. I know our team does. Alexandra, have you used it much over there with Delta?
I have used it a few times, especially with writing letters to clients to either do business or update them on policies and stuff like that. It does help a lot. There is some tweaking because some of the wording, like, you don't want to sound too fake, if that makes sense, because there is a point where it does sound a little too much like an AI and it removes the human element.
Yeah, I agree. And we have, and I know I showed this before, but maybe I'll show it again just for grins. But one of the things that we've done is we have created a database of prompts, because the one thing that I hate doing is finally figuring it out. And, you ask it questions and you say, refine it. And then you get the answer. And then next thing you know, that circumstance appears again. And you don't want to have to go through that iterative process again. And so what I'll do is we create this whole database, and we put them in a testing phase. Then we figure out what it is. And then it becomes really scalable at that point, because anybody in the team can just go grab the prompt, paste it in there, and it'll work. Like, for instance, when we're writing over here, Alexandra, just to give you an idea, and this is some of the stuff that we teach over here, but we have a whole system here, and we'll give it some context. We have style points that make it write in a style that sounds way less robotic. and it actually produces some decent content. And then we go in and we tell it a little bit about the data, what size of a post we want, how many sections do we want, how many words do we want, and then we have a really instructive prompt that tells it how to do this. And so this particular prompt, for instance, will create a, I don't know, it'll create about a 1,500 word blog post, or 2,000, frankly. You can't go into Chat GPT, and that's what we have this other YouTube series we're getting ready to start. And we can't go into Chat GPT and just say, write me a 1,500 word blog post on topic X. You have to do a whole lot more than that. First of all, Chat GPT can't count characters or words. It'll just give you like this range. And so if you tell it to write a 1,500 word, you'll be lucky if you get 600 out of it. So you have to create a scalable prompting system to do that. And once you've gone through your refinement, that's where I would suggest you go in and you create a library like this so that it becomes a lot easier and a lot more repetitive. And I'll give you, for instance, we have a course that we teach people how to create a lead magnet. And it actually, the first step is it brainstorms the ideas for you, which is really cool because we were trying to figure out, some stuff on our own. And it comes up with a lot of ideas, from webinars to conferences to downloadable checklists. I mean, it comes up with a whole lot of ideas. And then you go, ooh, I like that idea. And then it'll expand it and it'll write all the copy for you. So it'll write the copy for the lead magnet itself, whatever that might be. So let's say it's an ebook. It'll write all the promotional posts. It'll write all the drip sequence behind it when somebody downloads it. It'll write all the other things for the landing page and the thank you page. And so it has allowed us to just save a ton of time. In terms of blog posts, as a for instance, last year I hired a guy to write 7 blog posts for us, and I think it was like $3,500, and it took about 4 weeks to do. Using this prompt, I could do that same series in a day, and it would sound like me, and it would have all of my thoughts and inputs in it. And all I would have to do is edit it up, So that's what I'm looking at in terms of scaling up marketing from AI, just from a content production standpoint. It accelerates like nothing you've ever seen before. But then when it comes to the analytics part, that's the part that I'm really excited about. How many of y'all have played around with Chat GPT other than Alexandria? Janine, have you, or Nailani?
We are using Chat GPT currently because we have several writers that write blogs for our law firms. We're using it as a research tool, but I'm very curious where you got all those scripts from, and the way that you narrowed it down on so that you could be very specific what it writes about. I was not aware that that was available, those types of, context that you could give the Chat GPT, because we're getting some really good results from it. It's scary how well it writes. But again, it writes sort of like a machine, and our writers are having to finesse it. And I have heard that, you get better results if you feed it better information. We're not at that point yet.
Yeah. No, that's part of our training where we teach you how to do that. When you do that, the difference is astounding. You have to use GPT-4. GPT-3 sounds too much like a robot. And last week we got into some time frames where GPT-4 was sounding robotish. It has a tendency, because it's predicting the next word, as they say. Sometimes when it's finished with a sentence, you go, I don't even know what you just said, right? Because it has this weird looping in the sentence. So we have to go modify that. But this week it got back on track. We had to modify a couple of prompts, which is, standard, right? You got to watch it and see what's happening. But it was very modest. But where I learned this initial technique was through a copywriter named John Benson, and he has a really great program. I'm in his mastermind, highly recommend him. But he showed me how he was doing his. And so I took that concept and I applied it to the B2B space that we're in. But I modified it significantly because I didn't want it to so for instance, the copywriters like John Benson, they're usually B2C. They're doing a lot of weight loss products and stuff like that. So they use a whole lot of different flowery language that I wouldn't use. But I was able to come up with styles where I could use little modifiers to get it in the voice that I wanted. And I can literally create blog posts that instead of normally I would rewrite and I'm sure Kelly will attest, I'll rewrite something 60% that I get back from a copywriter because it just doesn't hit the mark. I've kind of gotten ChatGPT down now where I only have to modify about 5%, if that, and Faith probably confirmed that as well. But the key is I want to make sure that it knows what I'm thinking, right? I don't want to rely just straight on it. Now, I'll also tell you, in GPT-4, are you using 4, Janine?
We are not. We were using Chat GPT-3, the previous
Okay,
version.
Yeah, big difference.
Okay.
I mean, the difference is an order of magnitude. I mean, it is so different. It's crazy. So, and these prompts that I was just showing you, they won't work on 3.5, but they will on 4. And what we do, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, so here you go. I actually have 3. Actually, in the company, we have 5 paid subscription to GPT-4 because it's that much better and it's that much faster. Well, it's slower in terms of how it actually produces stuff. This week it got a little bit faster, but the quality gets you from 0 to 60, like instantly. But the plugins that they have, Alexandria, have you messed around with the plugins yet?
No, I have not.
Very cool. Very, very cool. The plugin store is getting bigger and bigger, but it will go online now and search for stuff. So it's pulling back current information, which is really handy. You've got all these things that I'll just kind of scroll through and show you some of these things. When we first got access to the plugin store, I think there were only like 12. No, it was 8, wasn't it? Yeah, it was 8 because it was like around 80.
Something like that.
Something like that. It was really, really low. But see, now that there's already up to 24. One day soon, hopefully they'll have a search function in here. It's driving me crazy because it's really blowing up. But some of the tools in here are really, really interesting. Like for instance, I installed Zapier just to play around with Zapier. If you're familiar with what Zapier does, it's kind of a bridge between 2 tools. Like for instance, if you have a CRM and then you have a email automation platform and they don't have a bridge directly, you would use Zapier to create that bridge. But I installed Zapier just to see what Zapier would do. And I played around with, how sometimes you'll get an email from somebody and they have a signature, and inside the signature, it has their name and their address and their phone number and their cell phone number and all that stuff. I wanted to see if I could create something where I could just paste the signature line into GPT and have it then parse all the data and put it straight into my CRM. And so I was able to actually create a prompt that would do that. Now, because of the fact that GPT has to go out and then tap into Zapier and do all that, it takes a few seconds. So you're sitting here wondering, I type slow, so it's not a big deal for me to watch it. But somebody like Faith, who can type 1,000 words a minute, she'd go, I'd be finished by now, But for me, I was like, oh, this is great. So I can just do it, and they're in my CRM, But the output that it makes, and I'll just tell you, where is that blog post? let's just.
I have
go
a
here.
quick question. Is
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
plugins for the chat like the 4.0 or is it available for also 3.5?
4.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 4. It's all paid, but it'll search the web. So this blog post, 95% of it was written by ChatGPT. Right? The table was written by ChatGPT. The links were written by ChatGPT. All I did was go through it, clean it up, make it sound the way I wanted it to sound. But it did this in seconds, right? I mean, it took me a little bit to say, okay, now I need you to create that in a table and make the hyperspace links. And then, of course, once we put it online, we had to make sure that all of this stuff would open in a new tab. So there were some tricks to it, but the amount of research that this did for me, instead of me having to go find all these things and find the links and look at it, it literally did it in about, I don't know, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. So that's the kind of head start it can give you. So I don't know whether your bloggers, Janine, could benefit from something like this. My suspicion is you would really accept
They
it.
absolutely would benefit from it. And I will recommend we move to Chat GPT-4 immediately.
Yeah, no, it's a no brainer. And I mean, look, I was doing the math on it, and it at an 8-hour work day, it boils down to about 12 cents an hour. So you can't buy that kind of productivity for 12 cents an hour. I don't care what third world country you're looking for, right? It's amazing. And the tools that you can access are just really, really cool. I'm waiting for some better tools, but I have, as you can see in this one, I've got several of them. This one for SEO, it'll do some SEO analysis for you, which is cool. This one will look at competitors' ads, which is also helpful. This one is some sort of an ad assistant. I haven't had a chance to play around with it. I played around with the scraper. I would tell you that since these tools are all free right now and everybody's clamoring to build one, some of them work better than others. And this one failed the first time I tried to use it. This one will tell you how to pronounce something in some other language, but it doesn't do that great a job. It'll at least tell you what the translation is, but you can use that on Google Translate. These things will find AI tools, which are cool. This one will search YouTube transcripts, which is also kind of handy. This one circles the web for you. But then, of course, let me see if I can, I'm in there. If I go to a new chat, I'm going to show you. Yeah, see, it's already browsing the web for you. And if I refresh this, it'll show you something different. And maybe I'll have to go to a different one. Yeah, see, now it says browse with Bing. Before it just says browse the web beta. Now it says browse with Bing beta. We already know that Bing is using GPT-4. But anyway, bottom line, Janine and Alexandra, you got to get it. Are you on 3 or 4, Nailani or Alexandra, either of y'all?
I know I'm on 3. I may talk to David about possibly upgrading to 4.
Yeah, no, it's $20 a month. Nailani,
Okay.
have you used it at all?
Mm-mm.
Okay, it's crazy. It's just absolutely crazy. And the interesting thing is I got access to 4 before I got access to 4 on the playground. The playground is where you actually go in and try to mess around with the API and do a lot of coding, which is actually how I learned to do a lot of these little tricks, but playing in what they call the playground. And then I'll give you, for instance, I don't know, Craig, you may or may not be familiar with this on the playground side of it, but let me see. Is this it? Yeah, so if you go into the playground, this is where you adjust a lot of little things as you're trying to play around with it. So if you had an API and you're trying to build a program, this is where you test out the API to go back and forth on it. Y'all won't have to mess with this, but I had access to GPT-4 on the front end before I had it back here. And let's see. Yeah, see, now I have access to 4 on the back end, which I didn't before, which is great. So now I could build an API to tap straight into this. But this thing here called temperature, it just goes from 0 to 1. Oh, yeah. Oh, now it goes to 2. That's interesting. I always thought it was just 0 to 1. Maybe it's 2. What this thing does is think of this as a measure of creativity. So when you're in GPT 3.5, this thing is basically throttled at one thing. So that means that when you ask it to produce some content or write something, it just gets all over the place. It uses its own creative thought or whatever. And so it can come up with some pretty random stuff. But if you could dial it back to like 0.1 and you give it like some reference material and then you dial it back to 0.1, then it will try to stay in that lane. I know that's probably hard to explain what I'm trying to say, but I know that like if I want it to repeat something and I don't want it to get all crazy the next time because like it was close enough, if I have that temperature set really low, then it will get close and it won't go crazy. But if I have the temperature set really high, it will create something that means something similar, but the wording gets so bizarre is probably not the right word, but it just gets way too creative. Okay. So I want it to kind of stay in its lane. And so that's why on the front end, I'll put a parameter in here that drops that down. Now, if I see that what it's producing isn't really creative enough, then I'll gradually increase that. And you can't do that in 3.5. And that's why 3.5 can sound really robotic. And 4 will too. Like there's certain keywords, like if you're trying to write something that's even the slide's a bit promotional, it uses words like skyrocket and, I forgot what other junk it'll use. It drives me nuts. If you're trying to say, and y'all probably have run into this, if you're trying to say, hey, write me an email to so-and-so that does such and such, about 95 times out of 100, it starts that email with, I hope this email finds you well. So now every time I get an email that says, I hope this email finds you well, I know somebody used AI to write it. So those are the things that you can control on the front end. So anyway, I hope that was helpful, or was that not?
That was very helpful. Thank you. It just proves my point that we need to switch to Chat GPT-4 right away.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And it does a better job, but the more you learn about how to control that, and the more you learn how to build a library of stuff inside your organization, because how many copywriters have you got, Janine?
We have 5 copywriters right now. What I was really interested in is I noticed you were able to set a preset, which is something that we could use since we are writing for the legal space, is having sort of defined how we want that stylistic writing to be.
Yep. And what we've done is I actually have a set of prompts that will take any kind of text that you've written. And let's just say that you've got, sometimes it's a legal document, other times it's a legal post, other times it's an email, other times it might be for a specific attorney who writes in a specific way. You can use this prompt and it will analyze that writing and then come up with those parameters, and then you store it. And then any one of your copywriters could get like an attorney that says, hey, I need you to write a letter to client X. Well, they just go to that prompt, they pick that particular attorney's style, and they take his bullet points or her bullet points and they paste it in there, and that thing will instantly create something that sounds pretty spot on. There are 26 levers that we've identified that you can use to temper that tone and cadence of those things. You don't need all 26 in everything that you write, but you'll need it, I would probably say, somewhere between 8 and 12 of them. And once you understand how to use them and how to modify them, it's amazing how well the thing will write right out of the gates. Because, you know, sometimes you're writing to a client and it could be casual, and other times it needs to be more formal, and other times it's a demand letter, which needs to be really formal, right? So having the right prompting library that dictates those tones is critical. So hopefully that was helpful.
That was very helpful. Thank you. Because if I'm understanding you correctly, we could take, say, their top blog posts that did really well in terms of analytics and use that stylistically to create more blog posts that are similar in style.
Yeah, there's several things that you can do with that. So especially if you know they did well, what you could do is you could take those posts, and this is something I could teach you how to do, right? You take these posts and you tell ChatGPT to analyze them, and you would give it the data so you'd know how many people viewed it, how many people engaged with it, et cetera. And then it would turn around and tell you suggestions on what to write in the future. And then, you know, you could also turn around and analyze the style of it. So it's not just the style, it's the topic, it's the SEO, all of those things come into play. So you have to know how to analyze that. And then you create your prompt framework to repeat that.
Can we do that analysis just in ChatGPT-4, or is there any plugins that you would recommend?
No, you can do it in GPT-4. So there are a bunch of AI tools out there that we've used over the years. There's Jasper, there's copy.ai, anthropic.com is coming out with one called Claude that writes really well. So there's a lot of writing tools that cost money to do stuff. There's pros and cons to them. So the pros theoretically are that they have built-in templates where you can just go, hey, I want to use this template and do this. The cons are you can't train them like you can GPT-4. So if you want just something that works out of the box, then you could look at Jasper and you look at copy.ai and you could look at Claude, and they'll write some interesting things. Bing doesn't do a great job of writing because it's got its own parameters that you can't budge. But for our money, we've used a bunch of them, but we were using Jasper for quite a while, and it always sounded a little bit robotic, but at least it accelerated the process. And then we tried copy.ai. There's another one called getcody.ai, which is really interesting, and it's starting to write some decent copy. But everyone has its own use case. So getcody is probably a little more for sales copy. So I don't know that I'd use it as a law firm, but I think for my money, we stopped using every other AI tool except for ChatGPT-4, just because we can train it and we don't need templates. We create our own. So literally we can build stuff in no time. Like the system we created to build a lead magnet, I can create a 2,500 word lead magnet with all of the promotional stuff, the landing page material, everything. I can create that in less than an hour. And that used to take us, 7 to 14 days. So I couldn't have done that on 3.5 or on Jasper. Jasper is just a pain, in my humble opinion, because you have to do it paragraph at a time, right? It's a little cumbersome. But you can have it review legal documents too, which is really fascinating, Janine.
We don't really have to review any legal documents, just write blogs and do their digital marketing. We've been using it for their social media posts as well to craft some really good social media posts. What interests me about the Chat GPT-4 is the ability to learn and evolve.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, well, look, every AI tool is going to have this one wrinkle that will drive you crazy because it's so fast how often it happens. But if you think about it, every time you put something into AI, it's learning. And since there are millions of people now pumping in stuff on a minute by minute basis, it keeps learning. And so it keeps getting better, but that means that your prompts need to be continually monitored. The thing that makes it work is that pre-framing that I was showing you. Just trying to simply create a prompt that says, write something that says this is what everybody else is doing. But when you can put all that pre-framing instead of it, it's called few-shot learning is the technical language of it. But when you learn how to do few-shot learning, then it's even more of a game changer for you. So you'll be able to write much better stuff much faster, and it'll already be SEO'd for you. It's really, really amazing. Craig, you got anything you want to add to the convo?
No, thank you. Most of it. We're more. I'm still learning too. We're doing a lot of back end work and a lot of the implementation side stuff, but I'm learning a lot more about possible implementations and usages and some different tools you exposed, John. So very helpful.
All right, you're breaking up so much that you sound like you're AI, but that's all right.
My apologies.
That's all right.
I guess.
Yeah. Oh well. So well. Anyway, I know we're kind of approaching bewitching hour. Is there anything that you want me to help you with or show you, or any questions I can answer for you before we wrap up?
I have a question. If I want to learn more about ChatGPT-4 and some of the features of it, where would be the best place you would recommend me going?
So there are plenty of places. So you could always go to YouTube. There's a lot of stuff there. The problem that I always have with YouTube is that people are so generic that you're not going to get the details that you need. We of course offer training. We of course offer one-on-one coaching. So I'll throw my hat in the ring for you. If you want to learn how to do really good sales copy, then I would look at John Benson's training. And let me see if I can find. And there was another guy that did something out there that, oh, phooey. Give me a second here, Janine. I'm going to try to find the right one to recommend you to. He has one called Chat VSL, but it is very much geared towards sales. But ooh, I see now VSL. Let's see if he was clever enough to reserve the domain name. Yeah, here we go. So I'll paste this in chat. And hang on a minute. Let me do that one more time. Okay, that's John Benson's. And then,
Great, thank you. I'll start there.
yeah, that's what I would do. And I know that we can send you some info on what we can offer you as well. So anyway, it's all good stuff. But anybody else have any other questions or thoughts? All right. Well, then I will release you to the clouds. And thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it. You'll get further emails on what we are going to be covering next week. This is a 10-week free roundtable discussion. And if you have other questions that you want to bring to the table, let me know in advance. I'll be happy to go into more detail in some of these calls. So appreciate y'all coming, and have a blessed weekend.